Imagine a puppet, its strings invisible, its movements dictated by a master it can neither see nor comprehend. Now, imagine that puppet is you. Not literally, of course, but what if your thoughts, your emotions, your very decisions, are being subtly, expertly guided by forces you're not even aware exist? What if the choices you believe are your own are, in fact, the carefully orchestrated outcomes of someone else's agenda? This isn't science fiction. This is dark psychology. Dark psychology is the study of human behavior that manipulates, coerces, and exploits others for personal gain, often at the expense of their well-being. It's about understanding the vulnerabilities of the human mind, our fears, our desires, our inherent need for belonging and validation, and then weaponizing that knowledge. It's not about overt threats or physical force, it's far more insidious. It's the art of psychological warfare waged in the everyday, in relationships, in the workplace, in politics, and even in the products we consume. For centuries, thinkers and strategists have delved into the intricacies of influence. From Sun Tzu's ancient treatise, The Art of War, which speaks of knowing your enemy and yourself, to Niccolò Machiavelli's controversial The Prince, advocating for cunning and deception in leadership, the concept of manipulating human behavior for power has a long, unsettling history. Machiavelli, for instance, famously argued that it is much safer to be feared than loved, a stark illustration of a tactical approach to control rather than genuine connection. But the modern understanding of dark psychology goes deeper, integrating insights from clinical psychology, neuroscience, and sociology. It's about understanding cognitive biases, emotional triggers, and social dynamics to craft narratives and situations that bend reality for the target. It leverages our innate human programming against us. Consider the fundamental human need for connection. A dark psychologist might exploit this by first love-bombing a target, overwhelming them with affection and attention, only to later withdraw it, leaving the target desperate to regain that initial feeling, making them more pliable. This channel, Mind Shift, is dedicated to understanding the human mind and becoming your best self. And part of that journey is recognizing the shadows. Because only when we understand these tactics can we truly protect ourselves, assert our boundaries, and maintain our autonomy. We're not here to teach you how to become a manipulator, but rather, to arm you with knowledge, to illuminate the invisible chains before they bind you. One of the most chilling aspects of dark psychology is its subtlety. Often, the victim doesn't realize they're being manipulated until severe damage has been done. They might feel confused, anxious, guilty, or even question their own sanity, without pinpointing the source. A classic example is gaslighting, a term derived from the 1938 play and subsequent film Gaslight, where a husband systematically manipulates his wife into believing she is insane by subtly altering her environment and then denying her perceptions. She sees the gaslights dimming, but he insists they are constant, making her doubt her own eyes and mind. This isn't just a plot device, it's a real-world tactic that destroys self-trust and empowers the abuser. Psychologist Dr. George Simon, a leading expert on manipulative personalities, emphasizes that manipulators often operate without overt aggression. Instead, they use covert aggressive tactics, presenting themselves as victims, charming confidants, or even benevolent helpers, all while subtly bending situations to their will. He notes that these individuals often lack empathy, viewing others as mere tools to achieve their objectives. This instrumental view of relationships is a hallmark of many dark psychological patterns. Why do people fall victim? It's not a sign of weakness or lack of intelligence. It's often because manipulators exploit universal human traits, our desire to be polite, our trust in authority figures, our tendency to avoid conflict, our need for approval, and our inherent optimism. We often project our own good intentions onto others, assuming they share our basic morality. Dark psychology preys on this assumption. It turns empathy into a vulnerability, and trust into a weapon. Throughout this documentary, we will dissect the most prevalent dark psychological tactics, from the intricate web of gaslighting and narcissistic abuse, to the mass influence employed by cults and political figures. We will explore the subtle art of persuasion, the overt force of coercion, and the insidious nature of social engineering. We will examine real-world examples, historical cases, and delve into the psychological mechanisms at play. Understanding these tactics isn't about fostering paranoia, it's about cultivating discernment. It's about sharpening your awareness, strengthening your emotional intelligence, and building resilience against those who seek to control. It's about empowering you to recognize the invisible strings, and ultimately, to cut them. Because true freedom begins with the knowledge of what seeks to bind you. So, prepare to embark on a journey that will challenge your perceptions and perhaps even change the way you interact with the world. We will start by unraveling the most common and devastating form of dark psychology, a tactic so insidious it makes you question your very sanity. Stay with us as we expose the art of manipulation and gaslighting. The flickering gaslight in the old Victorian home. The dimming and brightening, a subtle change, yet enough to sow seeds of doubt in a woman's mind. Her husband, Jack, insisted she was imagining it, that she was losing her grip on reality. This classic tale from Patrick Hamilton's Gaslight gave a name to one of the most insidious dark psychological tactics, gaslighting. It's a form of psychological abuse where a person, or a group, makes someone question their own memory, perception, or sanity. Gaslighting is a slow, methodical poison. It doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small denials. "I never said that. You're too sensitive. That didn't happen the way you remember it." Over time, these denials escalate, eroding the victim's confidence in their own judgment. The abuser might hide items, then accuse the victim of losing them, or deny promises they clearly made. The goal is to destabilize the victim's sense of self and reality, making them entirely dependent on the abuser's version of events. Dr. Robin Stern, a psychoanalyst and author of The Gaslight Effect, identifies several key stages. It often starts with disbelief, where the victim tries to prove the manipulator wrong. Then comes defense, where they try to convince the gaslighter of their own reality. Finally, they reach a stage of depression and despair, where they internalize the gaslighter's narrative and truly believe something is wrong with them. This is the point where the gaslighter has achieved maximum control, as the victim's internal compass has been thoroughly broken. Consider a real-world scenario. A professional constantly undermines a colleague's work, publicly dismissing their ideas, privately taking credit for their achievements, and then, when confronted, feigning ignorance or accusing the colleague of being overly emotional or paranoid. The colleague, initially confident, begins to second-guess their abilities, their memory of events, and even their sanity. They spend countless hours rechecking their work, seeking external validation, and eventually, their performance suffers, reinforcing the gaslighter's narrative. This is not just workplace drama, it's a deliberate campaign to dismantle a person's professional identity and self-worth. Manipulation, in its broader sense, is the art of influencing others without their full knowledge or consent, often to serve one's own agenda. Gaslighting is a powerful form of manipulation, but it's far from the only one. Manipulators employ a vast toolkit of tactics, often switching between them seamlessly. One common tactic is guilt tripping. This involves leveraging someone's sense of obligation or morality to induce them to do something they might not otherwise want to do. "After everything I've done for you, you can't even do this one small thing?" This phrase is designed to bypass rational discussion and directly target emotional weakness. It makes the victim feel like a bad person if they don't comply. Then there's playing the victim. Here, the manipulator exaggerates their suffering or helplessness to evoke sympathy and avoid responsibility, thereby getting others to do their bidding or excuse their behavior. "I'm just so overwhelmed, I don't know how I'll ever manage this without your help," when they are perfectly capable. This tactic often creates an uneven dynamic where the victim feels constantly burdened to rescue or care for the manipulator. Love bombing, often seen in the early stages of abusive relationships or cults, is an intense display of affection, attention, and flattery designed to quickly create a bond and overwhelm the target. The manipulator showers the target with compliments, gifts, and promises of an ideal future. This creates a powerful emotional dependency, making the target highly susceptible to later manipulation. When this intense affection is later withdrawn, the target feels a profound loss and will often go to great lengths to regain that initial feeling, making them vulnerable to further control. Another subtle form is passive aggression. Instead of direct confrontation, the manipulator expresses hostility or anger indirectly, through procrastination, sarcasm, forgetfulness, or stubbornness. This leaves the target feeling frustrated and confused, unable to address the core issue because it's never directly acknowledged. "I'm fine," said with a seething glare, is a classic example. Dr. Harriet Lerner, a clinical psychologist, highlights that manipulation thrives on a lack of clear boundaries. When individuals struggle to say no, or when their self-worth is tied to pleasing others, they become prime targets. Manipulators are adept at sensing these vulnerabilities and exploiting them. They might use flattery to soften you up, then make an unreasonable request. Or they might use intimidation, not through physical threats, but through veiled criticisms or expressions of disappointment that make you fear their disapproval. Statistically, studies suggest that personality traits associated with the dark triad, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, are highly correlated with manipulative behaviors. Individuals high in these traits often exhibit a profound lack of empathy, a willingness to exploit others, and a strategic approach to social interactions that prioritizes their own gain above all else. They are not merely opportunists, they are often calculated architects of influence. The key to combating manipulation is awareness. Recognizing the tactics as they unfold, understanding the manipulator's agenda, and strengthening your own boundaries are crucial. It's about trusting your gut feeling, even when someone is trying to convince you otherwise. If something feels off, if you constantly feel guilty, confused, or drained after interactions with a particular person, it's a red flag. But what happens when manipulation graduates from individual tactics to an entire personality structure, where the very identity of a person is built around exploiting others? Next, we'll delve into the world of narcissistic tactics, unraveling how these individuals use charm, grandiosity, and profound insecurity to ensnare and control their targets. The web is about to get even more tangled. Imagine meeting someone who seems to embody everything you've ever wanted: charming, attentive, intensely focused on you, mirroring your interests and dreams. They make you feel like the most special, desired person in the world. This isn't a fairy tale beginning. For many, it's the start of a nightmare orchestrated by a narcissist. Narcissistic individuals, particularly those with narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, often employ a specific, devastating playbook of dark psychological tactics to draw people in, exploit them, and then discard them when they no longer serve a purpose. At the core of narcissistic manipulation is the need for narcissistic supply, an unending stream of admiration, attention, and validation. Without it, the narcissist's fragile ego crumbles. To secure this supply, they become masters of illusion and psychological warfare. Their journey typically begins with love bombing, a tactic we touched upon earlier. This is an intense, overwhelming outpouring of affection, compliments, and future promises. They might say, "I've never met anyone like you," or "We're soulmates, I just know it." They rush intimacy, perhaps suggesting moving in together or even marriage within weeks. The target, swept off their feet, often mistakes this for genuine, passionate love, unaware it's a calculated strategy to hook them. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology highlighted how individuals with strong narcissistic traits often excel at making positive first impressions, appearing highly confident and charismatic, making them initially very attractive. Once the target is sufficiently invested and emotionally hooked, the second phase begins: devaluation. This is where the mask starts to slip, and the abuse begins. The constant praise turns into criticism, the intense attention becomes neglect, and the idealization morphs into subtle put-downs. The narcissist might start criticizing your appearance, your intelligence, your friends, or your past. They might belittle your achievements or dismiss your feelings. You're too sensitive. Why can't you be more like X? You always overreact. This constant chipping away at your self-esteem is designed to make you feel inadequate, confused, and desperate to regain their approval. They might begin to flirt with others, ghost you for periods, or engage in silent treatment, all designed to destabilize you and increase your dependence on them. This phase often involves a heavy dose of gaslighting. The narcissist will deny past events, twist your words, and accuse you of imagining things, making you question your sanity. If you confront them with evidence, they might respond with "you're crazy, that never happened," or "you're making things up for attention." They rewrite history to maintain their narrative of superiority and control, systematically dismantling your ability to trust your own perceptions. Another common tactic is the blame game. Narcissists rarely take responsibility for their actions. Instead, they project their faults onto others, often the victim. If they are late, it's your fault for not reminding them. If they are angry, it's because you provoked them. This constant shifting of blame prevents them from facing their own imperfections and keeps the victim feeling perpetually guilty and responsible for the narcissist's emotional state. They also use triangulation, introducing a third party into a conflict to create jealousy, insecurity, or a sense of competition. This could be an ex-partner, a new admirer, or even a family member. By pitting people against each other, the narcissist maintains control and deflects attention from their own behavior. "My ex never questioned me like this," or "everyone else thinks I'm right." Finally, when the narcissist has extracted all the supply they can, or when their target starts to resist and assert boundaries, they move to the discard phase. This is often sudden, brutal, and without warning. The narcissist simply cuts off contact, disappears, or replaces the victim with a new source of supply, leaving the discarded individual in profound shock, confusion, and emotional agony. They might block you on social media, refuse to answer calls, or simply walk away as if you never mattered. This discard is designed to inflict maximum pain and to reassert their perceived power. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, a clinical psychologist specializing in narcissism, emphasizes the long-term psychological damage caused by these cycles. Victims often suffer from complex PTSD, anxiety, depression, and a shattered sense of self-worth. Their trust in others, and even in themselves, is severely compromised. It takes immense strength and professional help to rebuild after narcissistic abuse. The insidious nature of the narcissistic playbook lies in its cyclical pattern. The victim is often left longing for the love-bombing phase, believing that if they just try harder, or change enough, they can bring back that initial perfect partner. This hope keeps them trapped, enabling the cycle to continue. Recognizing these patterns is the first step towards breaking free. It's about understanding that the person you fell in love with during the love-bombing phase was often an illusion, a carefully constructed facade. The real person emerged during the devaluation. But what if the manipulation extends beyond personal relationships, becoming a tool for larger groups to control entire communities? Next, we'll explore how these subtle psychological pressures escalate into overt coercion and intimidation, a tactic often seen in authoritarian regimes and cults. How do entire populations become compliant, and what role does fear play in their subjugation? From the subtle whispers of a narcissist to the overt threats of a dictator, the spectrum of dark psychology broadens to include coercion and intimidation. While manipulation often works through stealth and cunning, coercion and intimidation are about raw power, forcing compliance through fear, pressure, or the threat of negative consequences. It's the iron fist, sometimes disguised in a velvet glove, sometimes brazenly exposed. Coercion is the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. It removes genuine choice. Unlike persuasion, which aims to change a person's mind through reason or appeal, coercion aims to bypass their will entirely. This can range from explicit threats of harm to more subtle forms, such as threatening to withdraw affection, employment, or social standing. Consider the classic example of workplace bullying. A manager might coerce an employee into working excessive, unpaid hours by subtly implying that their job is at risk if they don't comply, or by threatening to give them negative performance reviews. There might be no direct threat of firing, but the implication is clear, creating an environment of fear and pressure. The employee feels they have no choice but to comply, even if it goes against their well-being or ethical standards. Intimidation, closely linked to coercion, is the act of making someone feel timid or fearful. Its goal is to create an atmosphere where the target is too afraid to resist, speak up, or act independently. This can manifest through aggressive body language, menacing glares, shouting, or even subtle acts of sabotage designed to show who is in charge. Historically, intimidation has been a cornerstone of authoritarian rule. Regimes use public displays of force, surveillance, and swift, harsh punishments to instill fear in the populace. The Stasi, East Germany's notorious secret police, perfected the art of psychological intimidation. They didn't always use overt violence. Instead, they employed a vast network of informers, constant surveillance, and the knowledge that anyone could be listening, creating pervasive paranoia. Citizens were intimidated into self-censorship and conformity, fearing the unknown consequences of dissent. The Milgram experiment in the 1960s, though controversial, offered chilling insights into the power of authority and coercion. Participants were instructed by an authority figure, an experimenter in a lab coat, to administer what they believed were increasingly powerful electric shocks to a learner, an actor, for incorrect answers. Despite hearing cries of pain, a staggering 65% of participants continued to administer the maximum 450-volt shock, simply because they were told to do so by the authority figure. This experiment dramatically demonstrated how easily ordinary individuals can be coerced into committing acts that go against their moral compass, under the pressure of perceived authority. Another dark tactic is emotional blackmail. This involves using a person's emotions, particularly their fears, obligations, and guilt, to manipulate them. A common phrase is, "If you really loved me, you would." This puts immense pressure on the target, making them feel that their love or loyalty is contingent upon their compliance. It's a coercive tactic that preys on deep-seated emotional bonds. Coercion and intimidation often create a state of learned helplessness in the victim. When individuals are repeatedly exposed to uncontrollable stressors or feel powerless to change their circumstances, they may eventually stop trying to escape or resist, even when opportunities arise. This psychological state makes them highly susceptible to continued abuse, as their will to fight has been systematically broken. This is particularly prevalent in domestic abuse situations, where victims often endure years of coercive control. Think about the tactics used in high-pressure sales environments. Salespeople might use time constraints. "This offer is only valid today," social proof, everyone else is buying this, or fear of missing out, "You'll regret it if you don't act now," to coerce a quick decision. While not always malicious, these tactics leverage psychological pressure to bypass careful consideration, pushing consumers into choices they might later regret. What makes these tactics so effective is their ability to tap into fundamental human vulnerabilities, our fear of punishment, our need for approval, our desire to avoid pain, and our inherent tendency to obey authority. When these are exploited, our rational decision-making processes can be overridden by primal survival instincts. Protecting yourself from coercion and intimidation requires building strong internal boundaries and understanding your rights. It means recognizing when someone is trying to pressure you rather than persuade you. It involves practicing saying no, even when it feels uncomfortable, and being prepared for the manipulator's backlash, which is often an attempt to reassert control. But what happens when these tactics are applied on a massive scale, not just by individuals, but by organized groups seeking total ideological control? Next, we'll descend into the chilling world of cult psychology and indoctrination, examining how entire belief systems are engineered to strip individuals of their autonomy and bind them to a singular, often destructive, vision. From the chilling mass suicide at Jonestown in 1978, where over 900 people died by ingesting cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, to the Heaven's Gate cult in 1997, whose members believed they would ascend to an alien spacecraft following a comet, the history of cults offers a stark, terrifying glimpse into the ultimate application of dark psychology. How do seemingly ordinary individuals become so utterly controlled, so completely convinced by often bizarre ideologies, that they willingly surrender their lives, their families, and their very identities? Cults are masters of indoctrination, the process of instilling a person with doctrines, ideas, or beliefs, often uncritically. They don't just coerce, they fundamentally re-engineer an individual's worldview, values, and identity. This process is systematic, multi-layered, and deeply psychological. Dr. Robert J. Lifton, a renowned psychiatrist and author of Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, identified 8 key themes, or criteria, that characterize a thought reform environment, often present in cults. 1. Milieu control *. The cult controls all communication and information, isolating members from outside influences. This includes restricting access to news, family, and former friends. 2. Mystical manipulation *. The leader claims divine authority or special insights, orchestrating experiences that appear to confirm their power and the group's unique status. 3. Demand for purity *. The world is divided into good, the cult, and evil, everything else. Members are pressured to conform to an idealized image of purity, inducing guilt and shame for perceived imperfections. 4. Cult of confession *. Members are encouraged to confess sins and shortcomings, often publicly, which serves to bind them to the group and provides the leader with intimate, exploitable information. 5. Sacred science *. The cult's doctrine is presented as absolute, unquestionable truth, beyond all scrutiny. 6. Loading the language *. Unique jargon and buzzwords are developed, creating an us versus them mentality and reinforcing group identity. 7. Doctrine over person *. The group's ideology takes precedence over individual experience or personal integrity. Doubts are dismissed as weaknesses. 8. Dispensing of existence *. Those outside the cult, or those who leave, are deemed unworthy or evil, further isolating members and making departure seem unthinkable. This framework illustrates how cults systematically dismantle an individual's autonomy. The process often begins with isolation. New recruits are often encouraged, or even forced, to sever ties with family and friends. This deprives them of external perspectives and support systems, making them entirely dependent on the cult for their social and emotional needs. The BITE model, developed by psychologist Stephen Hassan, highlights behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control as the 4 pillars of cultic influence. Consider the recruitment tactics. Cults often target individuals experiencing vulnerability, those going through grief, divorce, job loss, or a spiritual crisis. They are offered instant community, purpose, and answers. This is often combined with intense love bombing, where new recruits are showered with attention and affection, making them feel deeply accepted and valued, a stark contrast to their previous feelings of isolation or despair. Once inside, sleep deprivation and malnutrition can be employed, further impairing critical thinking. Long, repetitive lectures, chanting, and meditation can induce altered states of consciousness, making individuals more suggestible. The constant reinforcement of the group's ideology, coupled with the suppression of dissenting views, creates a powerful echo chamber. The Stanford Prison Experiment, though controversial in its methodology, provided a stark demonstration of how quickly individuals can conform to prescribed roles and how powerful situational pressures can override individual morality, even when Roles are arbitrarily assigned. Financial exploitation is also rampant. Many cults demand members surrender their assets, work for free, or donate significant portions of their income. This financial dependency further traps members, making it almost impossible to leave without resources. The leader is central to the cult's operation. They are often charismatic, narcissistic, and believe themselves to be infallible. They cultivate a godlike image, demanding unquestioning loyalty and obedience. Any challenge to their authority is met with severe punishment, from public shaming to complete ostracization. The psychological impact of cult involvement is profound and long-lasting. Survivors often experience severe trauma, identity confusion, and difficulty reintegrating into mainstream society. They must deconstruct years of indoctrination, rebuild their sense of self, and learn to trust their own judgment again. The process of recovery can take many years, often requiring specialized therapy and support groups. Understanding cult psychology isn't just about sensational headlines, it's about recognizing the universal human vulnerabilities that these groups exploit. It's a stark reminder that even the most intelligent and well-meaning individuals can fall prey to systematic psychological manipulation when isolated, deprived of critical information, and subjected to intense social pressure. But dark psychology isn't confined to the dramatic extremes of cults. It also operates in the seemingly mundane, yet pervasive, digital landscape, where invisible architects are constantly trying to steer our choices. Next, we'll expose the cunning world of social engineering, revealing how clever psychological tricks are used to hack human minds, not computers, to gain access to our most valuable assets. Prepare to question every email, every link, and every friendly voice on the phone. In a world increasingly dominated by technology, we often focus on cybersecurity, firewalls, encryption, complex algorithms designed to protect our digital lives. But what if the weakest link isn't the code, but the human behind the screen? This is the realm of social engineering, the art and science of manipulating people into performing actions or divulging confidential information, often through psychological trickery, rather than technical hacking. It's human hacking, and it's far more prevalent and dangerous than many realize. The legendary hacker Kevin Mitnick, once the FBI's most wanted cybercriminal, famously stated, "Social engineering is the most powerful tool in the attacker's arsenal." He rarely needed to write complex code to break into systems. Instead, he would simply call up employees, pretend to be a colleague or a superior, and convince them to reveal passwords or grant him access. He understood that human trust, fear, and desire to be helpful were far easier to exploit than any digital safeguard. Social engineering relies heavily on principles of influence and persuasion, often leveraging our cognitive biases. Dr. Robert Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion, reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity, are the foundational pillars upon which many social engineering attacks are built. For instance, a scammer might first offer a small favor, reciprocity, before asking for confidential information, or pretend to be an IT manager, authority, to gain trust. Let's break down some of the most common social engineering tactics. 1. Phishing *. This is perhaps the most well-known. Attackers send fraudulent emails, texts, or messages pretending to be from reputable companies, aiming to trick individuals into revealing sensitive information like usernames, passwords, and credit card details. A well-crafted phishing email might mimic a bank's logo perfectly, use urgent language about account security, and provide a convincing, but fake, login link. The psychological trigger here is often fear of account closure or urgency. 2. Spear phishing *. A more targeted form of phishing, where the attacker tailors the message to a specific individual or organization. They might research their target's job, interests, or colleagues to make the email seem incredibly legitimate, increasing the chances of success. Imagine an email seemingly from your CEO asking you to urgently transfer funds, or an email from an HR department about new benefits, both designed to steal credentials. 3. Pretexting *. This involves creating a fabricated scenario, or pretext, to engage a target and gather information. The attacker might pretend to be a customer service representative, a new employee, or even someone from technical support. They build a believable story to extract details that would otherwise be protected. For example, a scammer might call a company pretending to be a new hire who forgot their login details and needs help from IT, subtly coaxing sensitive information from an unsuspecting support agent. 4. Baiting *. This tactic involves offering something desirable, like a free download, a USB stick found in a parking lot, or an appealing online offer, to entice victims to give up their information or infect their systems with malware. The human desire for freebies or curiosity is effectively exploited. 5. Quid pro quo *. Meaning, something for something. This involves promising a service or benefit in exchange for information. An attacker might call an office claiming to be from IT support, offering to fix a non-existent technical issue if the employee provides their login credentials. The employee, grateful for the help, unwittingly gives away access. The psychological underpinnings of social engineering are fascinating. Scammers exploit our inherent trust, our desire to be helpful, our fear of authority, and our tendency to take shortcuts. They leverage confirmation bias, where we seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, making us less likely to question a message that seems to fit our expectations. They also rely on emotional arousal, whether fear or excitement, which impairs rational decision-making. A recent report by the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, revealed that business email compromise, BEC, and email account compromise, EAC, schemes, which are sophisticated forms of social engineering, cost businesses over $2.7 billion in 2022 alone. This demonstrates the devastating financial impact of these human-centric attacks. It's not just individuals who are targeted, entire organizations can be brought down. So, how do you protect yourself from these digital deceivers? The key is skepticism and critical thinking. Always verify the sender of an email or message, especially if it asks for personal information or urgent action. Hover over links before clicking to see the true destination. Be wary of unsolicited offers or requests. If someone calls claiming to be from your bank or a tech company, hang up and call them back on their official, publicly listed number. Never give out sensitive information over the phone or email unless you have initiated the contact and verified the recipient. But the reach of dark psychology extends even further, seeping into the very fabric of our consumer society. Next, we'll expose the subtle, yet powerful, dark psychological tactics employed in advertising and marketing, revealing how our desires, insecurities, and subconscious biases are meticulously targeted to make us buy. Get ready to see every commercial, every ad, through a new, more discerning lens. Every day, we are bombarded with thousands of marketing messages. From billboards to social media feeds, television commercials to product placements, a constant stream of information vies for our attention and, more importantly, our money. But beneath the glossy surface of catchy jingles and aspirational imagery lies a sophisticated, often ethically ambiguous, application of dark psychology. Advertisers and marketers are masters at tapping into our deepest desires, fears, and insecurities to influence our purchasing decisions, often without us even realizing it. It's not just about selling a product, it's about selling an emotion, a lifestyle, an identity. And to do that, they meticulously study human psychology. One of the primary dark tactics is the exploitation of insecurity. Advertisements for beauty products often subtly, or not so subtly, highlight perceived flaws, wrinkles, weight, dull skin, creating a problem that their product then promises to solve. They don't just sell cream, they sell the eradication of an insecurity, the promise of acceptance, the dream of an idealized self. This taps into our innate desire for social approval and belonging. Consider the multi-billion-dollar diet industry. It thrives on creating and perpetuating feelings of inadequacy about body image, often setting unrealistic standards. Advertisements show impossibly lean models, implying that their product is the key to achieving this ideal. This isn't just about offering a solution, it's about making you feel dissatisfied with your current state, thereby creating a need. Another powerful tactic is the creation of artificial scarcity and urgency. Limited time offer. Only X items left. Buy now before it's gone. These phrases trigger our innate fear of missing out, FOMO, and the psychological principle that scarce items are more valuable. This pressure bypasses rational consideration and pushes us towards impulsive purchases. E-commerce sites often use countdown timers or display how many other people are viewing an item to create this artificial urgency. Social proof is another heavily utilized principle. Join millions of satisfied customers. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend. See what everyone else is raving about. We are social creatures, and we tend to follow the crowd, assuming that if many others are doing something, it must be correct or desirable. This herd mentality is a powerful psychological shortcut that marketers exploit to legitimize their products and services. Celebrity endorsements leverage a similar principle, combining social proof with authority and liking. Subtle forms of anchoring are also common. Presenting a high-priced item first, even if it's beyond your budget, makes subsequent, slightly lower-priced items seem more reasonable by comparison. The initial anchor sets a reference point, manipulating your perception of value. Similarly, presenting 3 tiers of a product often leads people to choose the middle option, perceived as the best value, a strategy known as the decoy effect. Emotional manipulation is at the heart of many successful ad campaigns. Charities use images of suffering children or animals to evoke empathy and guilt, encouraging donations. Luxury brands associate their products with status, success, and exclusivity, tapping into our desire for aspiration and social elevation. These ads don't just sell a car, they sell the feeling of power and prestige that comes with it. Even the colors used in advertising are psychologically chosen. Red can evoke urgency or excitement, blue conveys trust and stability, green suggests nature and health. These are not random choices, they are calculated to elicit specific subconscious responses. The music, the pacing, the types of people featured, every element is designed to create a specific emotional state and association with the product. The advent of big data and AI has supercharged these tactics. Companies can now collect vast amounts of information about our online behavior, preferences, and demographics. This allows them to create highly personalized, targeted advertisements that speak directly to our individual fears, desires, and vulnerabilities, often predicting our needs before we even consciously recognize them. This is often called predictive persuasion, a sophisticated form of dark psychology that leverages algorithms to anticipate and influence behavior. While not all advertising is dark, the line between ethical persuasion and manipulative exploitation can be blurry. The key differentiator is often the intent and the impact. Is the advertisement genuinely informing and empowering the consumer, or is it preying on vulnerabilities to create an artificial need or induce an impulsive, potentially regretted, decision? Recognizing these tactics is about becoming a more conscious consumer. It's about questioning the underlying messages, identifying the emotional triggers, and making informed decisions rather than reactive ones. It's about asking, am I buying this because I genuinely need or want it, or because this ad made me feel a certain way? We've journeyed through the individual horrors of gaslighting, the systematic control of cults, and the digital deception of social engineering. But how can we effectively counter these pervasive forces? Next, we will shift our focus to empowerment, exploring practical strategies and mental frameworks to protect ourselves, build resilience, and reclaim our autonomy in a world rife with psychological manipulation. This is where you learn to cut the strings. We've explored the chilling landscape of dark psychology, from the intimate betrayal of gaslighting to the broad societal influence of marketing and cults. The question now isn't just what are these tactics, but how do we defend against them? Knowledge is power, but it's only the first step. Building resilience, establishing strong boundaries, and cultivating critical thinking are your most potent weapons. This chapter is about cutting the invisible strings and reclaiming your autonomy. 1. Cultivate self-awareness and emotional intelligence. The better you understand your own emotions, vulnerabilities, and triggers, the harder it is for someone else to exploit them. Recognize your core needs for love, validation, security, belonging. Manipulators will often target these needs. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is this emotion truly mine, or is it being induced by someone else? Developing emotional intelligence means recognizing patterns in your own emotional responses and understanding how they can be influenced. Journaling, mindfulness practices, and therapy can be invaluable tools for this self-exploration. 2. Trust your intuition and gut feelings. If something feels off in a conversation or a situation, don't dismiss it. Manipulators are experts at making you doubt yourself. Your gut instinct is often picking up on subtle cues that your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. Learn to listen to that inner voice, especially when someone is trying to convince you that your reality is wrong. This is particularly crucial in situations involving gaslighting. 3. Establish and maintain strong boundaries. This is perhaps the most critical defense. Boundaries are the limits you set in relationships and interactions, what you are, and are not, willing to tolerate. Clearly communicate your boundaries, both verbally and through your actions. No is a complete sentence. If someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, it's a major red flag. Be prepared for manipulators to push back or react negatively when you set limits, as this challenges their control. This pushback is often a test. Holding firm reinforces your power. 4. Practice critical thinking and information verification. In an age of information overload and pervasive social engineering, never take information at face value. Question sources, seek multiple perspectives, and verify facts. Before clicking a link, hover over it. Before believing an emotionally charged claim, research it. This applies not just to digital interactions but to personal ones as well. If someone is making extraordinary claims or trying to isolate you from other sources of information, be highly skeptical. 5. Build a strong support network. Isolation is a manipulator's greatest weapon. Maintain strong, healthy relationships with friends, family, or mentors who offer objective perspectives and emotional support. When you're in a confusing or abusive situation, having trusted individuals to confide in can help you validate your perceptions and provide an external reality check. They can see the red flags you might be too close to discern. 6. Learn about manipulative tactics. The very act of watching this documentary is a form of defense. The more you understand the specific tactics, gaslighting, love bombing, guilt tripping, triangulation, projection, the easier it is to spot them in action. Naming the tactic often disarms it, shifting your perspective from confusion to recognition. For example, realizing this isn't my fault, this is projection immediately gives you psychological distance and power. 7. Don't engage with a manipulator on their terms. Manipulators thrive on drama, emotional reactions, and controlling the narrative. Trying to reason with a gaslighter or a narcissist often leads to frustration and further manipulation. Instead, disengage, use gray rock technique, making yourself as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock, or communicate in clear, concise, factual statements without emotional investment. Focus on your actions, not theirs. 8. Prioritize self-care and well-being. Being targeted by dark psychology is draining. Ensure you are taking care of your physical and mental health. This includes adequate sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress reduction techniques. A strong, healthy mind and body are less susceptible to psychological attacks. Remember, you are not responsible for someone else's behavior, only for how you respond to it. Breaking free from manipulative patterns often requires immense courage and a willingness to accept that the person you thought you knew might not exist. It may involve difficult decisions, such as ending relationships or changing environments. The journey to reclaim your autonomy is continuous. It requires vigilance, self-compassion, and a steadfast commitment to your own well-being. By understanding the shadows, you learn to step into the light. We've uncovered the hidden mechanisms of control, from personal relationships to global influences. But what does this mean for us as a society? What are the ethical implications of this knowledge, and how can we use it not just for defense, but for building a more authentic and empowered future? Join us for our final thoughts on the profound implications of dark psychology. We've journeyed through the intricate and often unsettling world of dark psychology, peeling back the layers of manipulation, coercion, and control. We've seen how these tactics operate in intimate relationships, in the workplace, within cults, across the digital landscape, and even in the subtle art of advertising. But what are the broader implications of this knowledge? Understanding dark psychology isn't just about protecting ourselves, it's about fostering a more ethically conscious and empowered society. The first, and perhaps most crucial, ethical implication is the responsibility of knowledge. Now that you are aware of these tactics, you bear a responsibility. This knowledge can be used to exploit, or it can be used to enlighten and empower. Our intention with this documentary has always been the latter, to arm you with awareness, not aggression. The power to understand human vulnerabilities comes with a profound ethical obligation to use that understanding for good, for empathy, and for protection, never for harm. One of the profound societal challenges revealed by dark psychology is the erosion of trust. When manipulation becomes pervasive, whether in personal interactions or public discourse, it breeds cynicism and suspicion. Citizens begin to doubt their leaders, consumers distrust brands, and individuals question the intentions of those around them. This erosion of trust can fragment communities, polarize societies, and make genuine connection and cooperation increasingly difficult. Rebuilding trust requires transparency, authenticity, and a commitment to ethical communication. For individuals, the journey through dark psychology can be deeply challenging. Victims often carry scars of confusion, self-doubt, and trauma. Acknowledging their experiences, validating their reality, and supporting their healing process is vital.